Hey there, it's Angela here and welcome to Let's Walk London. I'm actually sitting at my desk, but I'm about to go for my walk during lockdown, so I thought I'd take you with me. I will see you there. You want to see my desk? Well, here's a view of my office setup, which isn't very interesting. It's my very old laptop that I do my editing on. And that's actually Windows Movie Maker, which is such an old software that you can't get it anymore. And I hope during this time off to upgrade to a more sophisticated editing program. There's my endless notebooks. I have so many notebooks full of ideas and thoughts, and then I've got some research books there, Hidden Walks in London, that type of thing, 111 places in London you shouldn't miss, Walking London. That's my research, some of my electrical equipment. Bags that I tend to take on walks with me. That can be any number of them. The key thing is that they must be quiet so they don't rub and make a noise on camera, because then it sounds like I've developed a serious case of asthma. And there's some swag. This is kind of my swag corner from YouTube, because Dedicated Helper is a big proper YouTube, but because he's learning disabled I have to take him to all of his YouTube events. That there is my bag of all sorts, old notebooks, ideas, equipment, stuff like this. And there's some of my boots and shoes. And a view, this is actually our spare attic room. I've taken it over as my office. View from the window, because we're up on high in Surbiton. Hey there, it's Angela here, out for my lockdown walk. So I thought I'd bring you with me, because we're all encouraged to go out for our daily exercise. So I'm bringing you to a neighbourhood that's very popular for walking. Tilt that down slightly, there we go. And it's very popular for walking because it's got big wide pavements and roads. And despite the traffic that you can see ahead of you, there's actually not that much traffic at all. So we're actually approaching an old turnpike or toll from when back in the days when this was all farmland. So it's just farms here. Right, let's cross and see a bus coming. We're going to head that way on the way back. The buses have at most one or two people in them at the moment. So we're heading up Ditton Road. And we're on the edges of an area called, and I say we, Dedicated Helper is with me again today.
Hello.
And for this part of the walk, we have my dog, Frankie the French Bulldog. I'm going to tilt the Osmo Pocket up slightly. It's better. So we're on the edge of a conservation area here called Southborough. And Ditton Road is one of the original main roads through, if you can call it that. Because prior to the 19th century, as I said, there were just a few farms here. That was about it. So my hometown is Surbiton, Surrey. For British audiences, made famous from The Good Life, starring Felicity Kendall, Richard Byers, Penelope Keith. Oh, I can't remember the name of the actor who played her husband. Anyway, it wasn't actually filmed in Surbiton, The Good Life. I think it was filmed on a nice road in North London. We are in South London. Actually, we're South West London, technically. So you can see we've got some very big houses here. Gardens, mixed in with newer ones. Slowly over the years, the plots that were developed into luxurious suburban villas. They get redeveloped, knocked down, so you get quite a mix. Must remember to do my social distancing when I'm chatting away. So as you can see, a very popular area during lockdown. And dedicated helper and I are trying not to be slightly irritated that we walk here every single day during our normal lives, and now it's full of all sorts of people.
Yes, quite the transition indeed, I'll say that much.
We're not cross at all, are we?
No, we are perfectly happy about it. Oh yay, what joy.
So there's a plot that's been developed into newer houses, and that's the view east of here towards Berrylands, which was the only identifiable part of Surbiton. So Surbiton, as we know it now, was first visible on a map in the 18th century in the area of what's now known as Berrylands. That was Berrylands Farm, probably dating back to at least the 15th century. The history of Surbiton is really one of the trains, the railways. So during the Industrial Revolution in 1836, the main line of the London and South Western Railway was brought through Surbiton because, legend has it, the residents of Kingston didn't want a train line through there. Shrewsbury House School. It was believed it would threaten. Oh, and I think this house here, is that the house that David Essex used to live in? I can't remember. David Essex lived here till about 2002, for those who know who he is. So yes, legend has it the residents of Kingston didn't want a big train line down to Southampton going through Kingston. They say Kingston Corporation, I think, thought it would ruin the coaching trade, wagon and horses type of stuff. But there is also another view put forward by historian Sian Butters, that actually it wasn't coaching interests, but it was an influential public figure, Charles Pepys, later Lord Cottenham, appointed Solicitor General in 1834, who opposed the original route because it ran through his Wimbledon estates. Anyway, the line got routed further south through a cutting in the hills south of what is now Surbiton, and so Surbiton railway station, described as a small cottage-like structure, opened in 1838 and was originally named Kingston upon Railway. It's only when Kingston actually got its own branch line to Shepperton that it became actual Surbiton. The present station is known as having an Art Deco facade. But the result of all those shenanigans is Kingston is actually now on a branch line, whereas we Surbiton lot have a much faster route into central London. So rather than 30 minutes to get to and from Kingston on the stopping service, we can be on a fast train in 17 minutes. And for various historical reasons, which I will get to later, it has been claimed, and I quote, "Surbiton may fairly claim its place in history, for it is the oldest suburb in Europe, perhaps in the world, that was called into being by a railway." What do you think about that, Frankie? Doesn't seem terribly interested in the story of the railways, does he? I wonder why, him being a dog. Now we're in the Southborough estate, and this was originally nothing but farmland. And in fact, when Southborough House, which we'll come on to later, was built by the Langley family, by the architect, designed by the architect John Nash, it was fields you could see for miles around. And there was a few farms and a windmill, I think, here. Now, little Frankie's trying to take us that way, because that's his usual walk, but we're going this way today. So I'm going to take you through a bit more of Southborough. Let's see if we can cross, because I can see some people. So we're all practicing social distancing. And that's one of the reasons that this area is so popular for walking. Now we walk little Frankie here most days. This is actually his regular walking spot. But during lockdown, the masses have taken over. And everybody comes walking here because it's at least a reasonable chance of social distancing. And you've got this handy phenomenon of actually being able to walk straight down a road, straight down the middle. You feel wild and crazy. So Thomas Pooley, who we'll come to later, once the Langleys have sort of set up this private estate, and then various things happen with properties and private estates, as you know. So Thomas Pooley, and others besides, I think, started dividing up the land into plots for villas. They were referred to as villas. And you can see these very big houses. Some of them date back to then. Everyone's crossing over to social distance. But you've got these very big plots of land dating back to the 19th century. And in fact it was this area that sort of led to the big sort of population growth around here at a particular point in history. Now, as you can see, with all the different houses, people have built, rebuilt, knocked down, built again. Some of the houses then are quite modern, whereas others very much retain their original look and feel. There's a few nursing homes as well, because they're pretty large places, so they lend themselves to that. But overall, most of them, I don't think they've been allowed to divide them up into flats or anything like this. Also a fair bit of filming. It's quite a popular filming location around here. So sometimes when we're walking wee Frankie, we can't walk along some of our roads. So there's a film crew and security guards. It's actually very quiet at the moment. I haven't done too bad having to dodge loads of people. I think it's fair it's fair to say, I think Southborough's, rather an upmarket neighbourhood, quite pricey, big houses. And in the years, the 20 odd years I've been walking here, I've seen most of the houses get ripped apart and put back together again by whichever owners have taken them over. You can probably hear little Frankie panting, but even if you go on a fairly speedy walk along here, it's very up and down hill, which is why joggers like to go sprinting, get the cardio workout going and their heart rate up. That's Southborough Close. I quite like Southborough Close, kind of right in the middle. And in a sec we'll be coming up to the view. One of the big sells of this area, when it was originally plotted out, was the incredible views across the countryside. These days mostly obscured through houses and trees. But usually as we walk we can still see the planes coming into land over Heathrow. Somebody's a little bit hot. Aren't you? Yes, you are. I don't care, Mum. Shut up. Yep. Okay, so Frankie's going to leave us now, so you won't be hearing our little chap. Say goodbye, Frankie. So that's Penton, which was built in the 1930s by somebody who built it for himself. Straighten this up. I've been having some recording trouble, so if there's a jump in the edits, that's why. Right, so looking straight ahead, it's pretty clear, and it's something we've noticed as we walk here every single day, that the air has cleared a lot. We can see a lot better towards Heathrow, Twickenham, places like that. And that's actually what made the place so popular. So back at the beginning of the 19th century, as I said, it was just farms. There was a settlement in Kingston, as you gathered. But here it was quite a distance over muddy, rough land, up and down hills. You may notice I get a bit breathless here because it's up down hills a lot, which is why it's so popular for walking. So this is an area of large detached houses dating from the 1860s to the 1930s mostly, although lots of redevelopment, as I've said. Now, Southborough House was the place that really kicked off this area, and this is now the Southborough Conservation Area. And this was actually the Southborough estate, which centred on Southborough House. Thomas and Sarah Langley, remember we walked into Langley Avenue, they actually commissioned the famous Regency architect and architect to Buckingham Palace. Just show you down there, you can see some of the more recently built houses. So Thomas and Sarah Langley commissioned John Nash, as I said, architect to Buckingham Palace, to build Southborough House on what some people say was Kingston Common and other people say was Surbiton Common in 1808. And we're going to be heading that way in a moment. So it's reasonably quiet today. How's your lockdown going, everybody? How's quarantine going on where you are? So the news this morning tells me that some European countries are now reducing some of their restrictions. In the UK, we've also just been told no time soon, which is probably wise for health reasons anyway. Obviously, economically, it's causing some problems. So, how is it where you are? I hope you're managing and coping with lockdown, psychologically and physically. I've been trying to learn how to do better YouTubing, have a better YouTube channel, as well as keep up with my job, which, as you know, I'm a university lecturer, so everything's gone online fast. And understandably, our students are quite anxious. So here we are, kind of further down the hill. Now we're going to head up. This is a popular hill. As I said, people like to jog and walk up and down, and indeed, little dedicated helper here. He does his training as an athlete up and down this hill.
Yes, it's quite good for intensive runs up the hill.
Yes, he does intense 15-second sprints up and down this hill. So we're now on, let me just double check, yep, Ashcombe Avenue. And we're leading up to Southborough House and Southborough, I think it's called Southborough Lodge. And from up the top of here you had views of all the royal parks. Don't know about all of them, but most of them in this area certainly. Hampton Court Palace, Bushy Park, Richmond Park, all sorts of places like that. So we're coming up to Southborough, the main house now, and that's at 14 Ashcombe Avenue. Went on the market a while ago. When I say a while, I mean quite a few years. And they said it wasn't much in residence there. Popular as a film location. Somebody coming in here. That way. That's called the Copse House. Just point you down the hill a moment so you can get a feel for the views that would have been available if they weren't obscured by trees and houses. So this was where it all started. Basically they built a house here. And it was a private estate. And then along came the railways. Just looking, trying to point you through there. It's very surrounded by trees through there. Yep, can't really show you much there. Being rebuilt, as always, refurbishments here. And then, for example, you have a house over there. Looks like that sort of 60s or 70s architecture to me. So there we are, number 14, which is the old Southborough House where it all started. And they're refurbishing at the moment. And then next along you have the old lodge. Here, Southborough Lodge. There you go. So that's the old lodge through there next to the house. And then you've got the coach house here. And as I said, this was the centre of everything. And then in addition to the railways, sort of kicked it all off. And somebody called Thomas Pooley then really kicked it all into gear. This is Southborough Close. Big development of houses there. This is where we are now. That dog's been with us most of the walk, bless it. Somebody jogging. So Thomas Pooley, after various changes of properties, land ownership, that type of thing, started to lay out roads and build houses in this area in the 19th century. But he ran out of money. And there's a very interesting paper which I'll put the link to in the description about Thomas Pooley's history in this area. It's claimed that the Wikipedia entry has treated him rather harshly. And in fact, you could say that, you know, he was a visionary and he dug up plots and he set up roads and tried to sell the idea through setting up big grand villas, many of which you can still see today, and tried to sell one of the first ideas in the world of a commuter town. And in fact, when I looked all of this up, I found out that I think around the middle towards the end of the 19th century, we actually had season tickets on the trains for people that lived here and could commute into London. So it was trying to sell the idea of clear country air. Oh, there's a dog arguing with another dog. So it's trying very much to sell the idea of clear country air and amazing views. You know, they sold it very much on some of the best views in England, they said, could be had from up here across the local countryside. And yet you could pop on your train into London, then pop home again. And I think there was some, I read something somewhere that on Monday mornings the trains were considered a bit busy. And perhaps they could put on some extra carriages or something. Sound familiar? Right, here's some people. So, Langley Avenue. You now know the history of Langley Avenue, that it was the Langleys that set up all of this. We're going to cut down here. This is Southborough Road. So this was one of the main roads and it led down to the turnpike or toll gate. And it was known as Southborough Gate down at the bottom of here. Removed in the 1880s, which is when the Southborough estate was broken up. Thomas Pooley gave over the rights to the property and land in bankruptcy, and Coutts took on much of this area. So Coutts, the bankers, took on much of this area then, and actually it was under their management that a lot of the Victorian houses came to be built. And I live in an old Victorian house in the area. There's also a lot of Edwardian and obviously 20th century development of flats, houses, that type of thing. So whenever we're walking back down in this direction, we know we've done all the hard work, done all the sprints and the jogs and everything. We're heading homewards. There's also an exceedingly friendly cat here. There's another old coach house there. Never know if people claim they were old coach houses in the stables, or if they genuinely are old coach houses. You can see the sort of style houses here that were traditionally built. Just going to cross over here. And there is a car coming. There's more traffic today. What do you reckon? Do you reckon there's more traffic today? Seems a little bit busy to me.
Yeah, maybe. It's a bit up and down, I find, the traffic around here. Sometimes it's quiet, other days not so much.
So here we have rainbows. So everybody's putting out rainbows. I think it started for school kids. Now this is interesting. There's houses along there that have literally just been built. They've just moved in this last month. I can't even remember what houses were there beforehand. Anyway, so it's been quite quiet actually. You tend to see a few more people than this usually. We were promised the hottest day of the week today, but Carol Kirkwood on the weather this morning changed her mind. Said, looks like it's going to be cloudy, maybe some rain this afternoon. So we switched our walk to morning. Usually we go out after lunch. So again, some of the more modern houses in the area as we head down to where the Southborough toll would have been. Wonder how much you paid for the toll. And there would have been Victorian houses along here. As I said, lots of them knocked down and replaced. So this block of flats straight ahead replaced Victorian houses. And interestingly enough, one of the Victorian houses that was knocked down was actually the home of Thomas Hardy, author of Far from the Madding Crowd. I don't think it was for that block, it was the next block up. But we're going to cross, so Still try not to press buttons. The roads are empty enough that we do try and just wait for a gap in the traffic. I'm gonna run. So heading in this direction, we're heading towards the A3. So we're actually heading south of Surbiton. Surbiton is behind us. We're heading more towards Tolworth and Hook. I'll show you in that direction. So that would take you towards Surbiton. Here's the Maypole pub. Here's Maypole Motors, where I have my car fixed from time to time. So yes, this heads down to Hook, which, when Thomas Hardy lived here, would actually have been a hamlet. I love the word hamlet, because it's really just a tiny, tiny village. So Thomas Hardy lived here in Hook Road in the mid-1870s, aged 33 and newly married to his wife Emma. The couple were starting their married life in lodgings called St David's Villa. And Far from the Madding Crowd, his very famous novel, was actually in production at the time. I think they were just getting it into publication when he was living here. And it was one of a row of houses that stood just here, where Midhurst Court is now. Just going to come to the side for this person. So they don't know, they're walking straight outside of where Thomas Hardy would have lived. And they were renting it, Thomas Hardy were renting it in 1874 to 75. And there is a blue plaque that says this is where Thomas Hardy lived. Although in fact he lived next door, because they've knocked down where he actually lived. There would have been no house numbers at the time. It was an evolving area, as I said, during the Victorian era. But you are now on the spot where Thomas Hardy would have walked at about the time he was publishing Far from the Madding Crowd, which he would have been. He would have been a long way from the Madding Crowd as this area evolved, though you wonder if it might have been a bit of a building site. Maybe there was a whole load of work going on that was disturbing him. Right, so we're going down this little alleyway, which is part of our dog walk quite often. Before we head off homewards at the end of our daily exercise during lockdown. I know I've heard from one of you that you're taking your dogs out twice a day, 3 times a day. I think that's in America. I must admit our dog's going out twice a day. But here's a French bulldog, and we've had some hot weather. French bulldogs and hot weather don't go well together. So often we walk up there, and as you can see, sort of got the more sort of Edwardian end of the scale for the houses that have been built here. Just get onto the pavement. As usual, the mix of newer houses, older houses. Also, I think this area did get bombed during the war, so you sort of, while I've been here, sort of had empty patches that then get built into new houses. I think you can hear our footsteps, can't you? As I said, quieter walk than we used to. Quite often see a lot more people out when we're doing our walk. And the sun just about stayed out for us. So you can see we got a mix here, Edwardian Victorian style houses. This is really typical of this area of Surbiton. Some roads, as I've said, have lots of flats. I think during the 1980s a lot of the bigger Victorian houses were converted into flats. And one of our neighbours has reconverted 2 flats back into one house, which is handy because he's got 3 kids up to the age of 4, so they need that garden. So I think I'll end the walk here. I do hope you enjoyed seeing my daily walk around Surbiton, the Southborough area, full of nice big wide pavements and roads, and relatively quiet. Hey there, well I do hope you enjoyed that walk through Surbiton and Southborough during lockdown. See you next time. Bye bye.